A canine sniffer dog found a missing girl after 48 hours, just when all hope had been lost. The search, which seemed doomed to fail, turned into a miracle, thanks to the keen sense of smell and tireless persistence of a four-legged hero. Just as rescue teams were about to give up, the impossible happened. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The cold autumn wind swayed the branches of the trees in Magnolia Park, scattering dry leaves across the stone paths. The small town of Campos Verdes, usually known for its tranquilities and Sunday farmers' markets, was now plunged into a state of growing unease. Beneath a blue slide, a pink, glittery backpack lay abandoned, as if it had been dropped in a hurry. It was the only trace of Beatriz Silva, a 9-year-old girl who had vanished without a trace. The afternoon was fading when Ana Silva realized something was wrong. A mother's intuition tightened in her chest as the clock struck 5 and there was still no sign of her daughter. Beatriz always came straight home from school, following the path through the park, a route Ana had carefully taught her. With trembling hands, the woman picked up the phone and called the school. "Beatrice left at the usual time, Mrs. Ana," the secretary informed her, her voice already laced with concern. The news spread like wildfire through the residents' messaging groups. In less than an hour, neighbors poured out of their homes, abandoning dinners and television shows to help with the search. The once clear sky began to darken with heavy clouds gathering on the horizon. When the first police officers arrived at the park, they tried to calm Anna, suggesting it might just be a misunderstanding, that perhaps the girl had gone to a friend's house. But the mother, her eyes welling with tears, shook her head. "She would never do that. She would never go anywhere without telling me," she insisted, clutching a jacket her daughter had left on the sofa that morning. The small town's police chief ordered his men to search every corner of the park. That's when they found the backpack, tossed aside as if Beatrice had been interrupted mid-play. The colorful object, a birthday present the girl adored, now seemed a distressing symbol of the unfolding mystery. The first drops of rain began to fall as the sky turned completely dark. Improvised floodlights illuminated the park while volunteers shouted Beatrice's name. The entire town seemed to have come to a standstill. The quiet routine had transformed into a collective despair. Anna remained motionless under an umbrella offered by a neighbor, watching the rain fall harder and harder, as if the sky were weeping with her. Hope seemed to wash away with the water pooling on the park ground, taking with it any certainty of a happy ending. The emergency room at the Campos Verdes police station buzzed like a disturbed anthill. Volunteers in yellow vests moved in and out, carrying maps and water bottles as they scoured every inch of the town for Beatriz Silva. Abandoned warehouses, forest trails, vacant lots. Nothing escaped the desperate search. It was at this critical moment that Sergeant João Santos pushed through the glass door, accompanied by Thor, his 4-year-old canine partner. The German shepherd, with his impeccably groomed black and gold coat, stood alert, as if already on a mission. The pair's arrival brought a momentary silence to the room. "I want the latest report and the girl's backpack," João ordered, dispensing with formalities. His reputation preceded him. 20 years on the force, 16 of them with K9 units, and a persistence that bordered on obsession when it came to missing children. The officer trusted Thor's nose more than any technology or hasty theory. While younger officers pored over digital maps and elaborate theories, João preferred the old way, letting canine instinct lead the way. "We've searched everywhere, Sergeant. No sign of her," a rookie officer reported, handing over the pink, glittery backpack in a plastic bag. João held the bag near Thor's muzzle. The dog inhaled deeply, memorizing little Beatrice's scent. He then looked at his partner with an intensity only João could understand. A silent communication built over years. With every passing hour, the pressure mounted exponentially. In the central square, local news reporters broadcasted live while the Silva family's neighbors took turns offering prayers and shedding tears. In the bakeries, churches, and markets of small Campos Verdes, there was only one topic of conversation. Where could the little girl be? Ana Silva, Beatrice's mother, appeared briefly on television, her face swollen from crying, pleading for information. The image of that woman, devastated by pain, sent a shockwave through the town, uniting strangers in a bond of solidarity and anguish. The clock at the station mercilessly ticked away each lost minute. João knew that in disappearance cases, the first 48 hours were crucial. Time was his fiercest enemy, and the cold that descended with the night seemed to freeze any hope of finding the girl alive. As darkness swallowed Campos Verdes, Thor remained restless, as if sensing something humans couldn't grasp. João stroked the dog's head, whispering, "We'll find her, partner. We just need you to show us the way." The first 24 hours after Beatriz Silva's disappearance were marked by intense but fruitless searches. When morning broke over Magnolia Park, Sergeant João Santos returned with Thor, determined to cover every inch of the area, while volunteers shouted the girl's name near the woods. The German shepherd took a different path. Thor stopped abruptly before a moss-covered manhole, a spot that had already been superficially checked by previous teams. The dog began to whimper softly, scraping his paws against the metal lid and looking at João, with amber eyes that seemed to plead for trust. It was as if he was trying to communicate something only he could perceive. "What did you find, partner?" João murmured, kneeling beside the animal. Despite the exhaustion weighing on his shoulders after hours without sleep, the sergeant trusted Thor's instincts more than any standard procedure. With the help of two officers, they removed the heavy lid. The beams of their flashlights illuminated only dirty water and accumulated mud. There was no sign of Beatrice. "Are you sure, Thor?" João asked. As the dog continued to pace restlessly, sniffing the opening, João carefully lowered himself down, searching every corner of the narrow space. He found only debris, dry leaves, and the heavy silence of the early morning. After nearly an hour, he had to admit there was nothing there. Thor, however, remained agitated, refusing to leave the spot. Meanwhile, Campos Verdes, a town normally known for its lively harvest festivals and afternoon soccer games, sank into a silent, collective mourning. The windows of the houses remained lit throughout the night, with residents unable to sleep while a child was missing. Ana Silva, Beatrice's mother, had distributed hundreds of posters with her daughter's photo. Her face, marked by tears, would occasionally appear at her window, waiting for news that never came. Exhausted and disappointed by the lack of concrete clues, João walked away from the manhole. Thor reluctantly followed his partner but kept looking back, as if he knew something important was being left behind. What the animal's keen sense of smell had detected remained a mystery that only the coming hours would reveal. The dawn of the second day brought a thin mist that blanketed Magnolia Park. João Santos decided to return to the site alone, against the advice of his superiors. He dismissed the exhausted volunteers and the reporters who were turning the Silva family's pain into sensational headlines. He needed silence to think and, more importantly, for Thor to work without distractions. "Come on, boy. Show me what we're all missing," the sergeant murmured, releasing the German shepherd's leash. The dog, as if understanding the gravity of the situation, moved with determination through the deserted park, his nose to the dew-damp ground. Thor stopped abruptly and once again focused on the same manhole that had caught his attention the day before. This time, his barks were different, more urgent, almost desperate. The animal scratched at the rusted metal with his front paws, looking at João with an intensity the officer had never seen in their 5 years together. Exhausted after 48 hours with barely any sleep, the sergeant knelt on the wet grass. His muscles ached, his eyes burned, and the hope he had so fiercely held on to was beginning to fade. How many times had they checked this manhole? 3? 4? The search teams had sworn the drainage network was empty. It was then, in the silence of the morning, that João heard it. A sound, almost imperceptible, coming from the depths of the drainage system. A faint scratching, like fingernails trying to find a grip. A whisper so fragile it could have been the wind in the leaves. "Is someone there?" he asked, leaning over the opening, his heart pounding in his chest. Thor barked again, spinning in circles, as if confirming his human partner's question. João forced the rusty grate open, ignoring the metal that cut into his hands. Suddenly, from the shadows of the underground darkness, a small, trembling hand emerged, its slender fingers reaching for the light. "Beatriz!" he called out, his voice choked with emotion. The reply came as a barely audible whisper. "Officer, Thor found me." The sergeant pulled the grate off with all his remaining strength, as silent tears streamed down his face. There she was, little Beatriz Silva, alive, though frightened and weak. Her hair was tangled, her face was dirty, but her eyes still shone with the resilience only children possess. Thor gently licked the girl's face as João wrapped her in his jacket. Against all odds, Ana Silva would have her daughter back. And it was all thanks to a dog who refused to give up when all the humans had already lost hope. News of Beatriz Silva's rescue spread through Campos Verdes like a wildfire in the dry season. The local radio station interrupted its programming to announce that the girl had been found alive, and within minutes, dozens of residents gathered in front of the municipal hospital. Neighbors who barely exchanged greetings now hugged each other, sharing in the collective relief that swept through the small community. Thor, the German shepherd who had been decisive in the rescue, instantly became the town's hero. Children drew pictures of him on the sidewalks with colored chalk, and the bakery in the central square announced it would create a special paw-shaped cookie in his honor. The dog, oblivious to his sudden fame, remained vigilant at his human partner's side. For Sergeant João Santos, however, something didn't add up. While the town celebrated, he watched Beatriz through the window of her hospital room, noticing how the 9-year-old girl flinched every time someone entered. The doctors attributed her reaction to the trauma of isolation, but the officer sensed there was more to it. He was wearing a dark hood and spoke in a low voice, Beatriz revealed to her mother when she was finally able to talk about what happened. Ana Silva held her daughter's hand tightly as the girl described how a man had chased her through the park, forcing her to hide in the drain to escape. He said he would come back for me if I told anyone. Most of the officers dismissed the account as the fantasy of a frightened child. The local chief, eager to close the case that had mobilized significant resources, preferred the official version. Beatriz had simply fallen into the manhole by accident while playing. Children make up stories when they're under pressure, he argued during a team meeting. But João Santos knew the look of true fear. When he entered the room for a brief visit, he saw how Beatriz's eyes constantly scanned the door, as if expecting the threat to materialize at any moment. The trembling in her small hands, as she drew a picture of Thor, was not just from physical exhaustion. "I believe you," the sergeant whispered, as Thor gently rested his head on the hospital mattress. The girl's eyes met his, and in that silent moment, João knew his work was just beginning. The morning after the rescue, João Santos was summoned to Chief Roberto Mendes's office. The atmosphere was tense as the head of the Campos Verdes police force flipped through reports with an impatient expression. "Congratulations on the rescue, Sergeant. You and Thor did an excellent job. Case closed." The chief shut the folder and pushed it to the side of his desk. João felt a tightness in his chest. "With all due respect, sir, the girl said she was chased by someone. We can't just... She's 9 years old, traumatized, and probably mistook a random passerby for a threat." "We have no concrete evidence, no witnesses," the chief had declared. "The child is safe. The city can go back to normal." But as Sergeant João Santos stepped out of the precinct, he felt the words ring hollow, a dismissal of a truth that gnawed at him. He walked through the central square, watching as Campos Verdes made a fragile attempt to reclaim its routine. Vendors set up their stalls for the weekly market, and the hesitant laughter of children returned to the playgrounds. Yet a palpable tension hung in the air, an invisible shadow that the morning sun couldn't dispel. Beside him, Thor seemed to share his disquiet. The German shepherd's ears swiveled, a radar dish tracking unseen threats, his gaze constantly sweeping their surroundings, as if he could perceive what the humans could not. That afternoon, João felt an undeniable pull back to Magnolia Park. While other officers dismantled the yellow police tape, officially declaring the area clear, Thor strained against his leash, his nose pressed to the ground with a renewed, almost frantic determination. "What is it, partner? What are you smelling?" João murmured, letting the dog lead. Thor broke into a trot, heading for a secluded bench and barking insistently at a crumpled piece of paper wedged beneath it. João carefully retrieved it. It was a simple store receipt, dated the day before Beatrice's disappearance. It could be nothing. Or it could be everything. Earlier, Ana Silva had called, her voice thick with tearful gratitude for her daughter's rescue. "She's still so scared, Sergeant," Ana had confessed. "She wakes up screaming in the night." João pocketed the receipt. His loyalty had always been to the force, but a deeper allegiance now compelled him. To abandon the case would be to betray not only the trust of a terrified child and her mother, but his own moral compass. Thor sat before him, his intelligent eyes seeming to see straight through the official reports and into the heart of the matter. João stroked the dog's head, a silent pact forming between them. "We're staying on this, partner," he whispered, "even if we have to do it alone." Campos Verdes tried to settle back into its familiar rhythm. The bakeries filled once more with patrons debating football, children returned to school, and the story of Beatriz Silva was slowly becoming a cautionary tale for winter nights. But for Sergeant João Santos, the narrative felt incomplete. Sitting in his parked car outside the station, he studied the photo of the rescued girl. The fear in Beatrice's eyes was more than just trauma. It was a silent, unread story. He made a decision. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Mariana Oliveira answered on the third ring. A former criminal analyst for the federal police, she had left the force after a case ended in tragedy. A witness killed on her watch. Now a private security consultant, she carried the weight of that failure like a permanent shadow. "I need your help, Mari," João said. foregoing the pleasantries. It's about the girl from the park. They met at a cafe near the square. Mariana arrived in a simple blazer and jeans, her hair in a loose bun. Her eyes, however, held the same sharp, analytical fire he remembered. They want to close the case as an accident, João explained, spreading photos across the table. No one believes she was stalked. Mariana examined the images in silence, her expression hardening. I've seen this pattern before, she murmured, almost to herself. In Ribeirão das Flores, 3 years ago. The next morning, they returned to Magnolia Park. Thor, energized by Mariana's presence, weaved enthusiastically through the bushes. Suddenly, he froze, letting out a series of sharp barks near a trash can. João, pulling on a pair of gloves, retrieved a crushed juice box. Beside it, small footprints in the dried mud told the story of a frantic escape. She was running, Mariana concluded, kneeling to inspect the marks. And someone was after her. Thor, continuing his search, found a scrap of dark fabric snagged on a thorn bush and looked back at João with an expression that said, I told you so. As they walked back, Mariana typed furiously on her phone, accessing databases she officially no longer had clearance for. There are 3 similar cases in neighboring towns over the last 2 years, she announced. Children who briefly vanished and were found in storm drains or other subterranean structures. A chill traced its way down João's spine. The peaceful town of Campos Verdes, known for its harvest festivals, was hiding something far darker than anyone imagined. We have to protect Beatriz, he said, his voice grim. Thor barked in agreement. This is just the beginning. After her rescue, Beatriz Silva had been taken to the municipal hospital. Physically, the doctors had cleared her, aside from dehydration and a few scratches. The emotional scars, however, were deep. In the safety of her living room, the girl spent hours drawing. Surrounded by vibrant colored pencils, she created image after image of the German shepherd who had saved her. In every picture, Thor was drawn larger than the humans, glowing with a protective aura. He's my quiet angel, she explained to her mother. He doesn't talk, but he kept me safe when I was scared. During one of João's visits, Beatriz abruptly stopped drawing. Her eyes widened as a memory broke through the fog. The man took me to a place with yellow stairs, she said, her grip tightening on the pencil. It was near the woods, where nobody could hear me scream. João exchanged a look with Anna. It was the first concrete detail. He noted it carefully, vowing to check every warehouse on the edge of town. Meanwhile, Mariana Oliveira had turned her apartment into an improvised command center. Maps, newspaper clippings, and photos of missing children covered her walls. Her gift was seeing patterns where others saw only coincidence. After 3 nearly sleepless nights, she found something that made her blood run cold. Over the past 2 years, 5 children had vanished from towns within a 100-kilometer radius, all near parks during the day, with no witnesses. 2 of them were never found. She called João immediately. This isn't an isolated incident, she said, her voice taut with urgency. This is a pattern. Someone is watching, planning, and acting with precision. The sergeant felt a familiar dread. If Mariana was right, the danger was still prowling the streets of Campos Verdes. Thor, lying at his partner's feet, lifted his head, his ears perked as if he understood everything. We need to find that warehouse with the yellow stairs, João replied, his gaze fixed on his dog. And we need to find it before another child disappears. Thor's nose was to the ground, his body a study in canine determination as he navigated the overgrown outskirts of Campos Verdes. After 2 sleepless nights, Sergeant João Santos followed the German shepherd's every move with a mixture of exhaustion and unwavering trust. "Come on, boy, show me the way," João murmured, as Thor pulled him down a barely there path between dense shrubs. 20 minutes later, they stood before an abandoned warehouse. The faded wooden structure looked as if it might collapse at any moment, its windows shattered and its roof caving in. Thor let out a low, guttural growl, a signal João knew well. Hand on his sidearm, the sergeant approached with caution. Inside, sunlight pierced the gloom through warped slats in the walls, illuminating a tableau of unsettling stillness. Half-eaten sandwiches, empty snack wrappers, and a half-full soda bottle littered the floor. Someone was here recently, João thought, documenting everything with his phone. In a dark corner, a collection of old toys lay scattered. A one-armed doll, a broken plastic car, and a small teddy bear stained with what looked like dried blood. Thor continued his search, leading João to a patch of dusty ground marked by recent tire tracks. "SUV or a truck," he muttered, mentally measuring the ruts. As he examined the tracks, he stumbled over a pile of collapsing cardboard boxes, sending a cascade of yellowed papers across the floor. Amidst the dust, one item stood out. A small notebook, wrapped in faded, childish gift paper. As he turned the brittle pages, a cold dread settled deep in his gut. It was the diary of a 9-year-old girl named Clara Mendonça, who had vanished from a neighboring town in 2017. The entries ended abruptly. The final one was a scrawl of terrified words. "He said we're going on a long trip tomorrow. I'm scared." João's hands trembled slightly as he photographed each page. This wasn't a coincidence. Beatriz Silva's case wasn't an isolated event. This was a pattern, perhaps even an organized network preying on children in the region. Thor whimpered beside him, as if sharing the crushing weight of the discovery. The sergeant stroked the dog's head, his mind already racing, connecting the dots. "We have to talk to Mariana," João said, carefully placing the diary in an evidence bag. "This is bigger than we ever imagined." A new kind of fear began to creep through Campos Verdes, a fear that took the shape of a black SUV. Several residents now recalled seeing it near Magnolia Park on the day Beatriz disappeared. Now, it was seen again, prowling the streets near schools and playgrounds, its tinted windows hiding the driver's intent. Mothers instinctively pulled their children closer. At the precinct, João walked through a corridor of averted gazes and whispered conversations. His colleagues treated his persistence as an obsession. The delegate had been blunt. "The case is closed, Sergeant. The girl was found. Move on." "You're going to lose your badge over this," a friendly colleague warned him over coffee. João just stroked Thor's head. "I'd rather lose my badge than my conscience." Meanwhile, Mariana worked relentlessly. Maps on her walls formed a disturbing mosaic of disappearance sites. Police reports, some obtained through less than official channels, were piled high. She found the link that chilled her to the bone. The same black SUV had appeared on security footage in 3 different cities, always in the days leading up to a child's disappearance. "João, look at this," she said over the phone, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and validation. The vehicle was spotted in Ribeirão das Flores 2 months ago, then Serra Alta 40 days ago, and now here. And every time a child went missing. He knew she was right, but he also knew that photos of a car and a string of coincidences wouldn't be enough to officially reopen the case. "We need hard proof," he muttered. Thor paced restlessly beside him, sensing the urgency. That night, they met in an empty supermarket parking lot. Under the stark fluorescent lights, they laid out their maps and notes, with Thor sitting watchfully between them. Together, they made a dangerous plan to monitor the vehicle themselves without official sanction. If we're right, Mariana said, her voice low, we're not just dealing with a lone kidnapper. We're dealing with a network, João finished. He looked at Thor, whose intense gaze seemed to absorb every word. And they could be planning their next move right now. In the soft-lit quiet of the therapy room at Campos Verdes Municipal Hospital, Beatrice's memories surfaced in fragments. There was a noise, she whispered to the psychologist, her purple crayon hovering over the paper. Like rusty chains. And it smelled old, like Grandma's house when it rains. Behind a one-way mirror, Ana Silva wrung a handkerchief in her hands, her heart aching with every new detail her daughter recalled. Someone watched me through a broken window, Beatrice continued, now sketching a dark, shadowy figure behind shattered glass. He just stood there, looking. He never said anything. João took meticulous notes while Mariana studied the drawings. The former analyst saw what others might miss. The fear in the trembling lines. The architectural accuracy of details that could only come from a real memory. Every piece of this puzzle brings us closer to him, Mariana murmured, arranging the drawings in chronological order. Beatrice is giving us more than she knows. Miles away, on the edge of town, Thor was back at the abandoned warehouse, sniffing the perimeter with a supernatural intensity. Suddenly, he stopped near the back entrance and began digging furiously at a pile of dead leaves. João's thought was cut short by the sharp ring of his phone. It was the officer he'd left with the dog. The man's voice was breathless. Sarge, you need to get back here. Thor's found something. You have to see this. When João arrived at the scene, he found his canine partner sitting proudly beside a disposable phone, the kind of prepaid burner you could buy at any newsstand. With gloved hands, the officer examined the device, managing to power it on despite the low battery. What he saw made his blood run cold. Dozens of photos of Beatrice, at school, playing in the park, leaving her grandmother's house. Some were dated nearly 2 months before her disappearance. He was watching her, João whispered to Mariana, who had just arrived. He planned every detail. Thor let out a single bark, as if confirming the discovery. The sergeant stroked the dog's head as Mariana photographed and documented the evidence. This changes everything, she said, her eyes fixed on the images. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. Beatrice was chosen, studied, and if there are other children on this device. João nodded gravely. We need to find out who this man is before he chooses his next victim. Campos Verdes was no longer the same. The case of Beatriz Silva had torn through the veil of security that had once blanketed the small town, exposing a wound that no one knew how to heal. In the local churches, nightly vigils became routine. Candlelight illuminated worried faces as whispered prayers begged for the protection of the community's children. Ana Silva attended every vigil, her face etched with dark circles, even after her daughter's rescue. Beatrice's mother now lived torn between gratitude for the girl's return and the terror that something similar could happen again. My son doesn't even go to the corner bakery alone anymore, one resident remarked during an impromptu community meeting. The sentiment echoed throughout the town. Empty parks, deserted squares, and children confined to their homes were the new reality. Magnolia Park, once the weekend gathering spot for families, now lay silent, as if the place itself carried a curse. Back at the police department, Sergeant João Santos faced a different kind of battle. Sitting before his chief, he listened once again as he was ordered to drop his parallel investigation. "Sergeant, the case is officially closed. The girl was found, she's fine, and we don't have the resources to chase ghosts," his superior stated, tapping a pen against the worn wooden desk. "With all due respect, sir, there's evidence suggesting the danger is still out there," João insisted, feeling the weight of insubordination in every word. Evidence based on a dog's sense of smell and the confused testimony of a traumatized child. The chief sighed, weary. "Santos, you're a good cop. Don't throw your career away over this." Leaving the office, João found Thor waiting patiently in the hallway. The German shepherd tilted his head, as if he understood his partner's frustration. João crouched down, running a hand through the dog's thick fur. "We both know the truth, don't we, buddy?" That same afternoon, Ana Silva appeared at the station with a homemade cake. The woman's eyes, still marked by her recent suffering, met João's with genuine gratitude. "Beatriz drew this for Thor," she said, handing him a colorful piece of paper along with the cake. The drawing showed the dog with angel wings, guarding a little girl in a pink dress. In the corner, in a child's handwriting, were the words, "My silent hero." João carefully folded the paper and tucked it into his uniform pocket. In that moment, he decided he would continue investigating, even if it meant risking everything. Some truths needed to be brought to light, no matter the cost. Mariana Oliveira spent the entire night hunched over maps and notes spread across her small living room table. Her eyes burned with exhaustion, but determination kept her from stopping. Connecting colored pins that represented sightings of the black SUV, the former criminal analyst noticed a disturbing pattern that had escaped the official investigation. "João, look at this," she said, as the sergeant arrived with coffee for them both. "The vehicle always appears near schools around dismissal time, or close to community gatherings. Here at the Harvest Festival, then at the church fair, and 3 times near the elementary school." João studied the map, a chill running down his spine. "That means—" "Exactly," Mariana finished for him. "Whoever is behind this knows the routine of Campos Verdes intimately. This isn't an outsider. It's someone who understands the flow of the town, who knows when the children will be most vulnerable." The sergeant ran a hand through his hair, his worry deepening. The idea that the predator could be someone they knew, perhaps even a respected member of the community, made everything even more terrifying. That afternoon, while they were investigating near Magnolia Park, Thor began to act strangely. The German shepherd sniffed the air anxiously, barking and running in circles before bolting towards the woods that bordered the park. "He's found something," João muttered, following his canine partner through the dense vegetation. Thor led them nearly 300 yards to a point where the undergrowth was thickest. There, partially covered by foliage and camouflaged among the shrubs, they found a small, makeshift shelter, a simple structure of tarpaulin and branches, almost invisible to the untrained eye. João crouched down carefully as Thor remained on alert, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Inside the hideout, a shoebox contained dozens of photographs. The sergeant's stomach turned as he recognized Beatriz Silva in several of them. Pictures of her playing, leaving school, walking with her mother. But what truly froze his blood were the other photos. Different children, of various ages, all photographed unaware. On some of the images, Small pencil notations indicated names, schedules, and routines. My God, he whispered, sorting through the pictures. Some of these children are still missing. Thor sniffed restlessly around the hideout, as if he knew they had found something crucial. João photographed everything with his phone before carefully collecting the evidence. Mariana needs to see this immediately, he thought, stroking Thor's head in gratitude. The dog had once again proven that his instincts went far beyond police training. It was as if he understood the gravity of the situation and the urgency of saving those children before it was too late. The news that a predator was watching their children spread through Campos Verdes like wildfire. Mothers exchanged frantic messages in WhatsApp groups, while fathers took improvised shifts to watch over parks and schools. The town, once known for its quiet Sunday farmers markets and lively church fairs, now lived under a heavy blanket of fear. Mariana Oliveira wasn't satisfied with the local investigation. The former criminal analyst drove her own car for over 100 miles, visiting 3 neighboring towns where similar cases had been reported in the last 2 years. At each stop, she found mothers with the same hollow look she had seen in Anna's eyes, women scarred by pain and uncertainty. My daughter disappeared for 3 days before she managed to escape, one mother in a nearby town told her. She mentioned a man taking pictures, but no one had believed her. In another town, a teacher showed Mariana newspaper clippings about 2 unsolved disappearances. The descriptions matched. Back in Campos Verdes, Mariana shared her findings with João. The sergeant, increasingly isolated in the department for his insistence on the case, felt a shiver run down his spine as she spread photos and reports across the table. "We're dealing with something bigger than we thought," she said, pointing to a map where she had marked all the incidents. "There's a pattern here, João, and if we don't act fast—" Thor, lying at the officer's feet, pricked up his ears as if he understood the gravity of the situation. The clock on the wall seemed to tick faster than normal. Every minute lost meant another child in potential danger. Mariana and João knew they were close to uncovering something terrible, but time was relentlessly working against them. The full moon hung over Campos Verdes like a watchful eye when Thor began to act strangely again. The German shepherd, walking calmly beside João during a night patrol in the central square, suddenly raised his ears and let out a low growl. Thor pulled hard on the leash, dragging the sergeant toward a set of dense bushes. Following his lead, João discovered a narrow opening in the vegetation. When he caught up to the dog, he froze. It was another camouflaged hideout, meticulously built to go unnoticed. "My God," João muttered, illuminating the space with his flashlight. Scattered on the ground were discarded toys, worn-out dolls, wheelless cars, and a dirty teddy bear that looked eerily similar to the one Beatriz had described. He photographed everything before calling Mariana. 20 minutes later, she arrived, breathless. "This is an observation post," she concluded, examining a pair of high-powered binoculars hidden under a tarp. "From here he can see the playground, the school entrance, and even the bus stop." A chill ran down João's spine as Mariana found a spiral notebook with meticulous notes. School schedules, children's names, family routines. "He doesn't act on impulse," Mariana whispered, her hands trembling as she flipped through the pages. "Every move is calculated. Every victim is studied for weeks." Thor nudged a piece of canvas with his snout, revealing a city map with red marks over homes, schools, and parks. "This is much bigger than we imagined," João said, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. This man knows every move the city makes. As Mariana bagged the evidence, Thor stood guard, as if sensing the danger was still close. What they had found was not just proof, it was a warning that time was running out. After sleepless nights, João Santos finally connected the pieces. Cross-referencing Mariana's meticulous reports with the clues Thor had sniffed out, the sergeant identified the driver of the black SUV, Ricardo Mendez, a former police officer dismissed from the force 3 years ago on charges of misconduct and abuse of authority. He knows all our procedures, João. He knows exactly how to evade a standard investigation, Mariana explained, as she spread photographs and documents across the table in their makeshift operations center. Her face was a mixture of satisfaction at the breakthrough and horror at the suspect's identity. Ricardo wasn't just an ex-cop. He had been a tactical investigations instructor at the Campos Verdes precinct. He knew every protocol and every loophole. It explained how he had managed to operate for so long without being detected. Thor seemed to sense the tension in the air, pacing restlessly around the room. João briefly stroked the dog's head, drawing comfort from the loyalty of a partner who had never doubted his instincts. "We need to catch him in the act," the sergeant murmured, looking at the city map. "He'll try again. Predators like him don't stop." The trap was meticulously planned. João and Thor would feign a routine night patrol through Magnolia Park. Meanwhile, Mariana would be in an unmarked car nearby, monitoring secretly installed security cameras. "If he shows, we can't spook him," João warned the few trusted colleagues he had recruited. "We have to catch him in the act, or he'll slip away and disappear forever." On the night of the operation, the tension was palpable. The park, once a place of joy, now seemed heavy with menacing shadows. João adjusted the ballistic vest under his jacket and checked his weapon. Thor at his side remained alert, as if understanding that this was the decisive night. Over the radio, Mariana's voice came through, low and steady. Black SUV entering the main avenue, heading for the park. "That's him, João." The sergeant took a deep breath, exchanging a meaningful glance with Thor. "Let's end this, once and for all, partner." The operation had been planned with meticulous precision. João Santos was strategically positioned near the park, while Mariana Oliveira monitored hidden cameras from her car. Thor, restless, seemed to sense that this night would be decisive. When the black SUV crept around the corner of Magnolia Park, the sergeant's heart hammered in his chest. The vehicle stopped a few yards from a little girl playing alone, seemingly forgotten by her parents. In truth, she was a carefully prepared bait, the daughter of a fellow officer, protected from a distance. The ex-cop stepped out of the car with a rehearsed smile and approached the child. In that instant, unleashed by João, Thor shot forward like a bolt of lightning. The German shepherd took the man down with stunning precision, pinning him to the ground with a ferocious bark. The sergeant was on him seconds later, cuffing the suspect who, stunned by the ambush, offered no resistance. "You don't understand. I'm not the only one," the man muttered as he was placed in the squad car. The words sent a chill down João's spine. With the suspect in custody, the team immediately drove to the warehouse with the yellow stairs that Beatriz Silva had described in her drawings. The place was hidden among dense trees, 20 minutes from the center of Campos Verdes. What they found inside surpassed their worst fears. On the second floor of the abandoned warehouse, illuminated only by the officers' flashlights, was a true operations center. Photos of dozens of children were tacked to the walls, some marked with a red X, others with blue circles, children's clothes neatly folded, toys organized by age, and most disturbing of all, handwritten letters from children pleading to go home. "My God," Mariana whispered, clutching a small rag doll. This is so much bigger than we ever imagined. Thor sniffed restlessly at the air, leading João to a locked cabinet. When they broke it open, they found detailed documents, escape routes, contacts in other cities, dates scheduled for new kidnappings. The warehouse was just one node in a criminal network that had been operating silently across the entire region for at least 7 years. João's phone rang. It was his superior, informing him that the suspect had confessed and was beginning to give up accomplices in exchange for a reduced sentence. The network was collapsing. As the forensics team arrived on site, Thor sat beside the sergeant, receiving a tired pat on the head. The dog who had found Beatriz when all hope was lost had now helped dismantle an entire criminal organization. You always knew, didn't you, buddy? João murmured to his four-legged partner. From the very first day. A palpable sense of relief washed over the streets of Campos Verdes following the ex-cop's arrest. The posters of Beatriz Silva that had plastered posts and walls were replaced by banners of gratitude. But the tranquility that once defined the small town had shifted into something else. A constant, conscious vigilance. At schools, new security protocols were implemented. Parents waited for their children at the gates. Watchful eyes scanned the perimeters of the parks. What had once been a carefree community now operated as a collective protection network. Neighbors watched out for neighbors. Shopkeepers kept an eye on the children passing their storefronts. João Santos received a commendation in a ceremony held in the central square. Exhausted after weeks of intense investigation, the sergeant could barely contain his emotion as the mayor pinned the medal to his uniform. Beside him, Thor sat with canine dignity, as if he understood the gravity of the moment. This man and this dog reminded us of the value of persistence, Ana Silva declared to the assembled crowd, holding her daughter's hand. When everyone said it was impossible, they kept searching. The town's children developed a special admiration for Thor. The German Shepherd, once seen merely as a police dog, became a living symbol of hope. Some schools even organized special visits so the students could meet the four-legged hero, always under the proud gaze of his human partner. For Mariana Oliveira, the outcome represented more than just a solved crime. After years of carrying the weight of unresolved cases, the former criminal analyst had finally found redemption. Her meticulous work, connecting patterns and evidence, had been fundamental in dismantling the criminal network. I'm ready for a fresh start, she confided to João over coffee at the downtown bakery. Maybe it's time to officially come back. The sergeant smiled, distractedly scratching the ears of Thor, who was resting under the table. The force needs people like you, he answered. The entire town seemed to be in a process of collective healing. Families began to cherish simple moments with a renewed intensity. Dinners together, walks in the park, conversations before bed. The fragility of their safety had been exposed, but so had the strength of their community bonds. At the makeshift memorial near Magnolia Park, fresh flowers were laid daily. A framed photo of Thor and João, side by side with a shyly smiling Beatriz, became the centerpiece of the tributes. A silent reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can have four paws and a loyal heart. Twice a week, Beatriz Silva walked hand in hand with her mother to the child psychologist's office. The therapy sessions became part of her new routine, a safe space where the 9-year-old girl could voice the fears that still haunted her in the darkest hours of the night. Anna watched, her heart both aching and hopeful, as her daughter slowly regained her trust in the world. What surprised everyone was the little girl's determination to help the investigation. During a therapy session involving drawing, Beatrice recalled a crucial detail. She had seen a calendar on the warehouse wall, with red markings that coincided with the dates of school festivals. This seemingly insignificant memory allowed João Santos and his team to establish a pattern in the crimes and identify other potential targets. She has an incredible photographic memory, Mariana Oliveira remarked as she organized the new evidence. The former analyst, now reinstated into a special task force, worked tirelessly to connect the dots between various cases. The information Beatrice gave us has led us to 3 other investigations that were closed prematurely. The girl's courage reverberated throughout the community of Campos Verdes. In schools, teachers began to use her story as an example of resilience, always careful to preserve the more traumatic details. Parents who once barely acknowledged each other now organized community watch groups and shared responsibilities for the neighborhood children. In a moving ceremony in the central square, the mayor inaugurated the Memorial of the Stars, a simple but powerful monument. For every child who had been a victim of violence, a small light was installed, forming a constellation that illuminated the town center at night. The bronze plaque bore a simple message, so that no star may be extinguished before its time. The town also established the Attentive Eyes program, an initiative that trained shopkeepers, school bus drivers, and public employees to identify signs of danger and create a protective network for its youngest citizens. Educational campaigns spread through the schools, teaching children about safety without feeding their paranoia. Thor, the German shepherd, who had found Beatrice when everyone else had lost hope, became the program's official mascot. The dog, with his calm and protective presence, would visit schools with João, drawing smiles from even the shyest of children. Something beautiful can be born from pain, Anna said during the memorial's inauguration, holding her daughter's hand tightly. My Beatriz taught me that hope is like a stubborn seed. It grows even in the most unlikely of places. 3 months had passed since Campos Verdes faced its worst nightmare. The central square, once silenced by fear, now pulsed again with the laughter of children. Autumn painted the trees of Magnolia Park in golden hues, as if nature itself were celebrating the town's renewal. João Santos watched the scene with quiet satisfaction. The sergeant had lost weight during the investigation, but his eyes reflected the peace of a man who had fulfilled his mission. At his side, Thor sniffed the air calmly, his coat gleaming in the afternoon sun. The German shepherd, now a local celebrity, accepted pets from the children passing by. I still can't believe we did it, Mariana Oliveira commented, approaching with 2 cups of coffee. The former analyst had decided to stay in town, accepting an offer to train the local team in investigative techniques. 3 trafficking rings dismantled in other states, all thanks to our discoveries. The case of the ex-cop and his black SUV had revealed connections to criminals in 5 different cities. The evidence found in the warehouse with the yellow stairs served as a key to unlock other judicial processes. Every toy and every letter found represented an interrupted story that was now finding justice. Ana Silva crossed the square, waving discreetly. Beatrice's mother was carrying a basket of bread for the newly inaugurated memorial, where families left messages of hope. Her face, once etched with despair, now held the serenity of someone who had weathered the storm. Look who's coming, João pointed out, smiling. Beatriz Silva walked shyly toward them, holding a colorful piece of paper. The girl still attended therapy twice a week, but her nightmares had lessened. Her steps, once hesitant, now had the firmness of someone rediscovering her confidence. I made this for Thor, she said, holding out a drawing where the dog was depicted with angel wings. Below, in a child's handwriting, it read, my silent angel." Thor, recognizing the girl's voice, approached her gently. The police dog rested his muzzle in Beatrice's hand, a gesture that seemed to say he would always protect her. The townspeople passing by stopped to watch the moment. Some applauded, others wiped away discreet tears. The scene symbolized everything Campos Verdes had learned: that hope survives even in the darkest of times, that persistence conquers fear, and that sometimes heroes have four paws. "I think we all learned something," Mariana murmured, watching the interaction between the girl and the dog. João nodded thoughtfully. "That even when all seems lost, it's worth it to keep searching." And there, under the blue sky of a town that had learned to protect itself without losing its tenderness, the most important lesson echoed in silence. Some bonds, forged in the darkest hours, forever light the way back home.